Black Righteousness Chapter 8 Part 1, Flesh vs. Spirit. The joy Wanyenyekevu felt inside was so intense he said, looking up toward heaven, "Truly Jeremiah, this feels like fire shut up in my bones." Lutzi appeared before Wanyenyekevu. "In the morning, make your way to Sondheimer, for this will be your last stop before you arrive in Tallulah." Wanyenyekevu said, "It is so." By nightfall, Wanyenyekevu had finally laid down, but his mind was still racing. Once asleep, he sees himself in the clouds again. As he descends toward earth, he sees a huge gathering, and in the center, there appears an elderly man marching in front of a military-style formation. He hears someone shout out a command, and the formation marches in place while the man marches alone up steps and stands in front of a podium. There are 11 men and women, and behind each of them, there are 20 people. Behind the 20, there are 200, and behind the 200, there are thousands, all marching in a unified formation. Another command is shouted, and he hears a great crowd cheering as the man stops and 3 women break away from the formation and walk onto the stage. The elderly man looks at the people behind him on stage. As he stands in front of a group of thousands of young men and women, a tear rolls from his eyes, the crowd shouting, "Sabaoth is mighty." The crowd stood up and cheered again. Please, sit down, for we are all mighty warriors of Sabaoth. We're here today because Sabaoth has called us together to do his work. We are many clans, but today we are finally one people with one heart and on one accord. He pauses. "Let us follow our hearts this day, rejoice, for Sabaoth has brought us out of the darkness we once were in. Yes, and united us to fight for freedom, not freedom of this world, but the one to come, and that with great power." The crowd roared as he continued, "Never did we know that something was hidden in us all these centuries, in our DNA, not seen, but felt within us. It can't be touched, but with it, we can move mountains." He then took out his hand and reached toward the sky, as his hand turned into fire. Wanyenyekevu woke up, and Yael was standing over him with the same blank face as usual, and Wanyenyekevu said to him, "I keep having these dreams. What do they mean?" Yael looked at him. "I'm here to train you and protect you. Now, go, make your way to Sondheimer. Beware that there will be obstacles and battles along your way." Wanyenyekevu reached for his backpack and began gathering his things. When he turned to speak to Yael, he had disappeared. Wanyenyekevu said to himself, "Should have expected that from Yael." As he finished gathering his belongings, he headed south on Highway 65. As he approached Sandfield Road, a strange sound could be heard coming out of the bushes, but he could not recognize the sound, so he grabbed his cane and strolled with caution. The noise had stopped. Passing Sandfield Road, the noise returned with a buzzing sound following it. Wanyenyekevu stopped and held his stance, but nothing was visible. With his eyes slowly moving around, trying to pinpoint the noise, it stopped again as soon as he reached Outpost Gin Road. The noise got louder. Out of the brushes walked 5 men dressed in battle gear from head to toe. One man, 6 foot 2 inches tall, very muscular, and weighed roughly 300 pounds, appeared to be the group leader and stood along the edge of the woods. He signals to the other men with his hand gesture, and the rest quickly runs out and surrounds Wanyenyekevu. "Little man, you're too far from home to be out here alone," said the man as he walked out to the middle of the road. They were Anakata's men with blades and guns, and one had a sword with a rotating blade, which made a buzzing sound. Looking at Wanyenyekevu from head to toe, the leader said to his men, "Whose child is this? And why would he be out here all alone?" Wanyenyekevu stood there in a stance, carefully looking at them all, even those that stood in his peripheral. "I am not a child and definitely not alone, for Sabaoth is with me everywhere I go," Wanyenyekevu said in anger after being referred to as a child. The man laughed. "Here we have one of those stupid-ass Nazirite." The rest of the men laughed and mocked Wanyenyekevu as the anger in Wanyenyekevu quickly became enraged while the men stood there and mocked him. A tall man approached. "No need to get angry, little man. We come in peace. Just hand us your weapons and that bag you have, and we will be on our way. That is all we want." Wanyenyekevu saw Yael appear and thought it was a test. "Yael, what is this?" Wanyenyekevu said. Yael said nothing before sitting on the ground with his legs folded. Not able to see Yael, the man said, "Who is it in which you speak to? Is your stupid-ass God here with us?" Tell that motherfucker to show himself so we may make a wish. The men mocked and laughed again at Wanyenyekevu. The stranger said as he pointed to his men. My men wish to make one wish to your God, and if he grants us our wishes, we will leave in peace. However, we will take your weapons and your life if he does not. This is Tavi. Go ahead, Tavi, tell his God what your wish is. Wanyenyekevu began to get tired of the blasphemy. He judged the men's distance and prepared himself for battle as the stranger continued to talk. This is Zader, Uday, Baal, and I am Achilles. If your God is not suitable for you, maybe you can worship me. As soon as Wanyenyekevu heard the man say, you can worship me, Wanyenyekevu throws a star with great force into the center of the man's skull, killing him instantly. Baal and Zader attacked Wanyenyekevu while Uday and Tavi ran back to their camp. Yael just sat there as Baal grabbed Achilles' blade and charged at Wanyenyekevu. Wanyenyekevu quickly grabbed his cane and blocked the sword, and he heard Zader approach from behind him. He mule kicks Zader in the groin and simultaneously twists the handle of his cane, forcing the blade to release from the chamber, spins around, and severs Zader's head from his body. Taking 2 steps back, Wanyenyekevu stuck the cane's blade into Baal's stomach and worked the edge up to his neck until his intestines oozed out of his body, killing him. Wanyenyekevu forcefully swung the cane as the blood from the 2 men fell to the ground. Seeing the blood, Wanyenyekevu was unsure if these were indeed men or spiritual beings, and his heart sank for a minute because he had never killed a man before, and his heart felt heavy and saddened. Thinking to himself that since Yael was there he had made the scene look realistic. Yael stood up. You would not be so tired if you had fought in the spirit. Shaking his head he continued, you did okay, but when you fight out of anger, you tend to lose control. Another reason to fight in the spirit. Wanyenyekevu bends down with both his hands on his knees, out of breath. I remember an old martial artist named Bruce Lee, who said, learn to discipline your emotions, because if you don't, your enemies will use them against you. Rising, he looked around him and saw all the carnage. Wanyenyekevu was in shock and slowly said, These were real men? The blood had covered the road and began oozing out of the bodies of the 3 men. Wanyenyekevu was in shock as he bent over and vomited. Yael looked at Wanyenyekevu with a straight face, kill. Or be killed. There is no more time for tests. This day forward you will see the world for what it is. This world hates you just because you are who you are. Yael paused, before you find rest in Sonheimer, you will either kill more men. Or die. Yael then disappeared. Wanyenyekevu walked over to a samurai that he noticed lying on the ground. He flipped it over and noticed it was old and nicely crafted. Looking at the details, it was a Wakatilian sword. Excellent craftsmanship. Going to keep it for myself. Since Wanyenyekevu was an excellent hunter who knew about tracking, he said to himself, those other men probably ran back to their camp. If I stay on the road, they will find me, but if I leave the road, it will not be easy to track me. Wanyenyekevu decided to re-step in their tracks until he found a place to hide until they passed. 20 minutes later, Uday and Tavi had returned with more men. He could hear a man speaking to Tavi and Uday. How is it a child has defeated my brother? Tavi repeatedly said to the man. This child just threw some kind of object and it hit him dead in the middle of his forehead, killing him instantly. Wanyenyekevu waited for 10 minutes and headed south toward Sonheimer. He found himself in what might have been a sugarcane field, for there was sugarcane growing wild in some spots. He stopped for a minute and rested as he cut off a piece of sugarcane. As he ate it, he heard the men, but he could tell there were not as many as before. Saying to himself, they must have split up. He stood on his knees and waited for a while before moving on. There was a road ahead, and Wanyenyekevu got low, stuck his head out of the field, and looked in both directions. Reading an old street sign, he could tell he was on the corner of Parr Road 1131 and Parker Road. He waited a while longer, staying low, trying to rush to the other side. Wanyenyekevu felt 2 presence, one of compassion and the other of hostility. Just then, like a flash of light, he saw Mletsi anointing his hands and laying them on him in a vision. You have the gift to search a man's heart. But not only a man but also all of Sabaoth's creations. You will know if he lies or speaks the truth. Then he returned to the present. Before he got to the other side of the road, Uday and Tavi were shouting. He's here, he's here. Wanyenyekevu looked at the two men standing before him with weapons drawn. I'm not here for trouble, I'm just trying to go my way in peace. You guys were the ones that attacked and harassed me. I was defending myself. Uday said, that might be, but you killed someone's only brother and he will not allow you to live another day for your actions. Wanyenyekevu then said, I will fight him and only him if I win, you let me go in peace, and we will leave it at that. Tavi said in anger, if you kill one of us, you have to kill all of us. You fucking Wakatilian. Trying not to get mad as he did before, Wanyenyekevu turned to Tavi, I will permit no man to narrow and degrade my soul by making me hate him, a quote by Booker T. Washington. Tavi said. Fuck you and Booker T, motherfucker. Taking a deep breath, Wanyenyekevu said, looking at Uday. Booker T. Washington also said, associate yourself with people of good quality, for it is better to be alone than to be in bad company.